one of the most robust truths in marketing that's been demonstrated by dozens and dozens of really good studies is that the predictor of a success of a new product is how different it is.
You're watching Young and Profiting Podcast on YouTube. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Hala, and on Young and Profiting Podcast, we investigate a new topic each week and interview some of the brightest minds in the world. Before we get started, hit the subscribe button and don't forget to click the bell icon to be notified every time we drop a new video. Welcome to the show, Dave. Happy to have you on.
Good to be here.
So you're known as the father of modern branding, and you've written over 17 books on the subject. You're also the vice chairman of Profit, a global growth consultancy. And good branding is crucial to business success. And so I can't wait to break down your branding secrets in this episode, as well as your Aaker brand vision model, and also super excited to cover your philosophy on owning game-changing subcategories. So to warm things up, I'd love for you to share how you first got interested in the topic of branding.
Well, I was, this goes back a long time from now, 30 years or so. But there was a time when everything was coming together in the late 80s. It was when this sort of BCG model of strategy, which was the growth share matrix, that it just said you try to expand market share, you'll get a cost advantage and you'll win. And that led people to do all sorts of dumb things, like to do price promotions and destroy brands and so on. And I actually did an econometric study. I started off as a statistician. I did a study that showed that if you increase market share, you in fact don't increase profitabilities if you analyze the data right. Because what they were doing is looking at cross-sectional data, which shows that large market share companies made more money than small ones. But that doesn't mean that if you increase market share, anything good will happen. And then what also happened during that time is the scanner data came out, which meant that for the first time, you could really tell exactly what people bought in the grocery store or the drugstore. And not only that, but you could set up a whole town where you could tap into their television sets and know exactly what they watched. So now you could run experiments that would show, compare 0 ads to 2 ads to 4 ads, and compare this kind of ad to that kind of an ad. And so finally science came to marketing. And everybody was so happy because now you could apply science to everything else. Now you could apply it to marketing. Well, what happened was that when you did these experiments, the only thing that paid off was cents out promotions or price promotions. And so they taught the consumer several things. One is that the only important variable is price. And two, if it's not on sale today, just wait 2 weeks, it'll go on sale. So they destroyed brands. This was in the same time frame. And so people were realizing this isn't working. And we've got to go back to basics. We got to somehow get our brand, brand back. And so the concept of brand equity was then introduced. And at the same time, I wrote a book and I taught business strategy. And I came to believe that companies were too focused on short-term financials and they needed to build assets. And I had background in market research. I wrote a book on market research and on advertising and on strategy. And so I was sort of well equipped to focus in on branding. And so that's what I did. It was really I was really at the right time at the right place. So I wrote my first book on how do you define and understand brand equity. And nobody had done that before. And I also told not only what it was, but why it was so valuable to not only the firm, but the customer. And I define it as being visibility and awareness and visibility. And then brand image was the second dimension. And the third dimension was brand loyalty. And nobody else had defined brand equity that way. They had always excluded brand loyalty. And that changes everything. When you put that in the mix, It changes. No longer can brands be run by middle management, by the advertising agency. They're now strategic because it's all tied up with the customer loyalty, which is without question a long-term asset. So that hit really at the right time.
Yeah, it was revolutionary. I mean, you put out your Aaker brand equity model in 1996, and people are still using it today. It's still in textbooks and things like that till this day. So it was very revolutionary. So basically, you took everybody out of this, mind frame that the only way to increase your brand was to get more market share and to lower prices and things like that. And you kind of turned it on its head with your new Aaker model. So let's talk about that a bit. There's a few different pillars: brand loyalty, brand awareness, perceived quality, brand associations, and proprietary assets.
Well, first of all, my first book, Managing Brand Equity, defined brand equity and showed why it was important. And then people said, okay, I'll buy into that. How do I manage it? And I wrote a second book called Building Strong Brands, and that's where the Aaker model appears. It's on how do you manage brands. And the essence of the Aaker model was that the people that were running brands in those days were ad agencies and lower level marketing managers. And the ad agencies wanted to have a single phrase to represent what the brand stands for, because they wanted to create an advertising campaign, and that's what they needed. And so a brand was a single thought. And not only that, but they often, most of the agencies had a little box, maybe 6 boxes, 8 boxes, 7 boxes. And if you wanted a brand strategy, you filled in the box. There'd be a box for personality, a box for brand attributes, a box for benefits, and so on. And so I basically said two things. One, a brand is not a 3-word phrase. A brand is multidimensional. It has 8 to 12, 7 dimensions. And that's especially true with business to business to service brands. And the second thing I said is there's no predefined boxes because every situation is different. And so what you have to do is to basically say, what do you want your brand to stand for? And never mind any prior boxes. What are your boxes? What makes sense for you? And then you take these 10 or 12 things and you prioritize them into a core group and an extended group. And that's really the essence of the what's sometimes called as the Aaker model.
Well, I'd love to kind of go through some of these points because I don't think everybody who listens to the podcast is a marketer, and I think it would be really helpful. So, for example, I'll tee you off. So, brand loyalty. Can you explain what brand loyalty is?
Brand loyalty is really in essence what you're buying when you buy a brand, because a brand has a following. It is a business base generating a potential profit flow. And that's what makes it really valuable. It's the core of it. It's the customer loyalty base. And of course, there's levels of them. There's the people that buy you and they don't think much about it, but there's no reason to change. There's the people that really like it and the people that are passionate about it and are really involved in your product. And it's part of their identity. It's part of their lifestyle. It's part of them. It defines them. So you want to have as large a group, especially near the top of that pyramid, as you can, because that represents a terrific barrier to competitors, because you've got the most attractive customers and they can't access them, or it'd be extremely expensive to do so. And so and each of those customers have a lifetime value, and that's really what your asset is based on.
Okay, and then another component of your Aaker model is brand awareness. So what do you think my listeners need to know about that?
Since I wrote that book 25 years ago, I've kind of expanded or redefined awareness. And because I've gotten real interest in what I call brand relevance. And that's tied into the subcategory stuff because it says when you create some new innovation, you win not because you're better, it's because the other people are not relevant. To be relevant requires awareness and credibility, or visibility and credibility. So it's not enough just to have people know your brand. Your brand can be known and be what's called what I call being in the graveyard. Means that everybody knows your brand, but they don't even ever think about it when they want to buy or use something. So it requires awareness, but also credibility, which means you're an option. I mean, it doesn't mean I'm going to buy you, but you're in my consideration set. That's the first dimension of brand equity.
That's really interesting that you say relevancy, because I think that's really key. There's lots of brands out there. Like I can think of like copier brands and things that like everybody knows Xerox, but nobody's buying Xerox, because they haven't adapted. So would you say that relevancy is really all about adapting to your customer needs?
You lose relevance for a couple of reasons. One is you lose relevance because you're not making what they're buying anymore. I mean, you're making an SUV, and they're buying electric cars, and so they could love your SUV, and they would never buy another SUV. I mean, another kind of SUV, and anybody that asked you, they would recommend your brand, but they're not buying SUVs. They're buying an electric car. So it doesn't matter how much they like your SUV. So that's one way to lose relevance. Another way to lose relevance is just to lose energy, to have a sort of you're bland, you're taken for granted, your grandfather's product, and you're fine, but there's no energy there. There's no reason to think about or talk about your brand. There's one other way you lose relevance, and that is if you create a reason not to buy. And it might be because you had a terrific product mistake. You make a cola and you had some contaminated water, or maybe you took a political view that was unpopular by some people, and they created a reason not to buy. So those are the three ways you become less relevant.
Yeah, in 2022, they call that being canceled. We have a cancel culture, so your brand could lose relevancy by being canceled. Yeah, that's so true. Let's talk about perceived quality. So, from my understanding, this refers to the public's understanding of your perceived quality of your products and services. What do you think we need to know about that one?
Well, I've since collapsed that into the brand image. So that's now just a part of brand image. And brand image is all the perceptions people have of you. When somebody mentions your name, what comes to mind? That's the brand image. And a brand image can be an attribute of the offering, like perceived quality, and what lies behind perceived quality is a really important factor, which is called trust. And but it also can be a personality, it can be values, it can be your willingness to take on social programs, it can be sort of an application and how that links into your lifestyle. So it can be a wide variety of things, but at the end of the day, what you want something that maybe gives self-expressive benefits. It tells people who you are, or it gives social benefits. It provides a link to other people, or it provides emotional benefits. It makes you feel something, and or it provides functional benefits. It ties you to using the brand.
So the last one that I want you to cover related to this model is proprietary assets, because usually when people think of brand, they're thinking about visuals, they're thinking about voice, personality. They're not really thinking about the assets or services or products that you're actually delivering to your customers. So can you tell us about that one?
I haven't thought much about that since I wrote the book, to be honest. But I think what I was thinking about there was things like symbols or stories. So I wrote a book on stories too, but suppose you have I'll give you a story. In the late 1880s, mid 1880s, there was a appliance company in China that was going to folding. It was a basket case, and they asked a middle manager to become CEO, and a customer came in and said, "I got a defective product." He said, "No problem. We'll go to the warehouse," and they found that 70% of the products there were defective. So he brought him onto the shop floor and he got sledgehammers, and his people destroyed them all. And he said, "From now on, we're building only quality products. That's us. We're not, no more." And that company today is the largest appliance manufacturer in the world. It's Haier. And everybody at Haier knows that story. They have a sledgehammer in a museum in their home office in China. And even the retailers know about that story. So when you're talking about what is the brand perception you want to create, the story is going to be part of it for that company. And so that's an example of a symbol that becomes an important part of your brand, maybe even a core part of it.
Okay, cool. So let's move on to your latest book. I think it came out in 2020. It's called Owning Game-Changing Subcategories, Uncommon Growth in the Digital Age. An essential thesis of your book is that the only way to grow your business, or with rare exception at least, is to find and own a game-changing subcategory. So first of all, let's define what is a game-changing subcategory in your own words.
It's an offering that contains some must-haves. And so that's something that customers will insist on. It's either a new or an improved offering, or advance to an old offering that it just creates a must-have. You really must have that. So the electric car is certainly in that category. Prius, when they came out with the first it wasn't the first concept, incidentally. It was the second. Honda was the first, but Prius was the first to get it right. But they went 12 years with no competition. No competition. And they had what's a must-have. And it was several must-haves, as is usually the case. There was the design of the car, there was the functionality, there was all the modifications and improvements they added each year. But anyway, and I started off studying beer in Japan. I've been to Japan a lot, and I looked at 30 years of beer data, and only 4 times did the market share trajectory change, even though there was enormous market spend in each of those years. 4 times, and each time there was a new subcategory developed, like Asahi Super Dry. And I looked at 24 other categories, and it's always the same: computers and banks and so on. When you see a spurt of growth, it's almost always driven by a new subcategory.
I'd love to kind of really go deep on this, because I really want my listeners to understand this. And I think the best way would be to go through some examples of businesses dominating their own industries who won this way by having their own game-changing subcategories. So why don't we give some examples? Like, how about Airbnb, Etsy, Warby Parker? Do you want to talk about any of those?
Yeah, those are all good examples. I talk in the book about how to compete against Amazon. And there's about 7 ways to do it. And they all involve creating must-haves that Amazon doesn't have. And Etsy is a classic example. It talks about a passion for craft and making crafts and appreciating crafts and using craft-built stuff. And that passion, I mean, Amazon has no passion for anything. Amazon is an amazing at delivering functional benefits. They sell everything under the earth, and all kinds of models and all sizes, and they'll deliver to you fast, but they have no passion. And so you have Casper that sells mattress, and they're really passionate about sleep. I think Amazon sells mattress. They don't care about sleep. They just want to functionally get you a mattress. So Etsy is that's one of the must-haves that Etsy has is a real passion and an authentic involvement in that industry that really appeals to people that make crafts and value crafts.
How about Warby Parker? Maybe that's a good example to kind of put it into
Well, Warby
practice.
Parker started off as its must-have was that it was relatively inexpensive and it was e-commerce. You didn't have to go to the store, and of course they've now developed some retail stores. But basically, they when they started, their must-have was you can do this over the internet. You can do this in the comfort of the home, and you will get not only will you get it fast and without a painful shopping trip and waiting in the line and in a showcase that has 300 glasses and you have no idea which is going to work from you. So Warby Parker does a couple of things. They sold over the internet, which was a big thing. And in doing so, they talked about the advantages of internet buying. Second thing, they had limited offerings. So you didn't have to choose between 800 things, but they chose, 12 or 18 that that's all you need to choose from. And second of all, they had some stylish. They had some designers, and they really put in some stylish stuff. So not only would you not have to sacrifice stuff, you were getting style, and so and of course with that platform, then they were able to go into storefronts and so on. But that's really their secret sauce. It's their e-commerce.
Yeah, I'm trying to really understand what's the difference between like a must-have and a benefit or a differentiator, or are they the same? Like, what is a must-have
A
exactly?
must
How
have
does
is
that
something you
differ?
must have. That means that you will not consider other products that don't have it, or at least um, you will not consider them unless you have to, because that's what you want. I mean, you now want an electric vehicle, and you are not going to buy an SUV, and and they're not relevant to you anymore.
Okay, and so usually when people are starting in business and they're interested in gaining market share, they tend to want to be the best in an existing category as opposed to just creating a new category altogether. What do you think is wrong with that thinking?
It just doesn't work. I mean, there's almost no people that grew their business that way. Almost none. I mean, it's really extraordinary. Actually, one of the probably most robust truths in marketing that's been demonstrated by dozens and dozens of really good studies is that you know what the predictor of a success of a new product is? The single most important thing, how different it is. Study after study after study rediscovers that having something that's really different is the most thing. Not only does it give the potentially give you something that you want to buy, it gives you something that people can talk about too. It gives you visibility. I mean, why would you read an ad about something that says I'm better than Gillette deodorant or something, instead of somebody saying I've got something completely different? And so and there's a definite correlation between being different and creating new must-have defined subcategories.
Okay, so having must haves really represent features or programs that other brands lack. And you also say that brands need parody must haves to counteract that reasoning that customers have for not buying their products. So there's must haves and then there's parody must haves. Can you explain that to us?
Well, let's take Dollar Shave Club. They came out with some razors and that they sold through e-commerce. They did a 4-minute video that you should go on I encourage you to go on the internet and look at it. It's very funny. It's this feisty underdog that's making fun of Gillette, making fun of the buying process. You have to go to a locked cabinet and and perhaps get arrested for buying this razor, and then you can't figure out which razor you want or what blade you want. And so they have a system where they'll just send you blades every month, and they give you a simple razor. And they got 18,000 subscribers in 2 days. They sold their company in 4 years for $1 billion to Unilever. But anyway, they had a problem, which Warby Parker had, which Casper Mattress has, is what makes you, this is probably junk. I mean, you're selling it at a low price. I can't taste it. I can't feel it. There's no drugstore guy that's going to give me a reassurance that it's good. That's the problem. How do you reassure people that it is, actually a good product? And that's a reason not to buy. So one of the challenges that Dollar Shave Club was to convince people it was actually a good product.
Yeah. So basically they have their must-haves, which is like their real differentiators that make them stand out, and that their customers are kind of obsessed with the fact that there's certain things like you can get it online and it's inexpensive. But the parody must-haves is that it has to be at least the same quality as what they'd get in the drugstore for that higher priced razor. Is that right?
Yeah.
So how do we go about finding the right subcategory? What is the way that like a business can explore and create and define their own subcategory?
There's a million ways to find a new product idea, but generally it comes from one of two general directions. It either comes from the market, sort of understanding the market and knowing that there's some kind of a need. So if you're talking to customers and so on, you find out what they're doing and the problems they're having, and if maybe they can't enunciate a need, but you can probably figure out the need just by hearing what they're doing and what they're groaning about. And that also goes to sort of understanding the market in a macro way, looking at not only your product class, but other product class, and looking at it in general, what are they trying to get from using this product? So you're not just tied into, let's make it a little better situation. And the other way is from your technology, your product, and you have a new technology. One of the great boons for the new subcategories, why they're more frequent and more important than ever before, is because of technology. There's the Internet of Things, there's artificial intelligence, there's the internet, and all this stuff has combined to make offerings and subcategories possible that weren't possible very long ago.
That's really interesting. So one of the things that you talk about in your book is that you advise that in order to be successful at this, organizations need to also create barriers for their competition that will inhibit their ability to become relevant options. So what are some of the common barrier strategies that you can name off?
More generally, let me take a step back. There are dozens of books on disruptive innovation. And a lot of them are really good and really innovation. We were talking before we started about the Blue Ocean book. That's one of them. But there's Christensen's books on disruptive innovation, and Porter, and there's really good people doing great stuff. And this has been extremely influential. But if you look at all those books, including Blue Ocean, they do two things. One, they always talk about categories and how often can you create a new category? Not very often, but you can create subcategories quite often. So subcategories is actually more relevant. But more important, you look at all those books, they don't mention branding. They just don't mention branding. You look in the index under B, they don't mention branding. It's as if disruptive innovation can come and take over a marketplace without branding. And in my research and my belief is that branding is so important in disruptive innovation, because you have to do four things. to be successful. One, you have to create yourself as an exemplar brand, a brand that represents the subcategory. Second, you've got to position the subcategory. You've got, like you position a brand, you've got to position the subcategory. You've got to, tell people what kind of dimensions should they be thinking about when they think about, sort of some use experience or some buying experience. What really are they after? And you have to keep that in mind. And the third thing is that they need to scale. They need to scale really fast. You can't enjoy the benefits of a skim pricing strategy we used to teach in the business school. And you price high at the beginning. That doesn't work anymore. You got to scale. You got to scale really fast because you got to own that market. And if you don't scale fast, somebody will come in. And actually, that's one of the barriers you create. But the fourth thing you have to do is to create barriers. And one of them is just, you own the best customers because you've scaled so fast. That's a barrier. The positioning creates a barrier because you position the subcategory in a certain way that's going to be sort of easier for you to fulfill because you own the Prius design or you own the hybrid transmission of Toyota or something. So you want to position the whole category that becomes a barrier to entry. But there's others. You can brand your some of your must-have features, and if you could, like Uniqlo, the Japanese clothing retailer, comes out with Airism, which is the kind of material that allows you to breathe in the summer, and they have Heat Tech, a kind of material that keeps you warm in the winter. Those are must-haves. Those are really created categories, and you know what? You can't get them anyplace but Uniqlo. So when they create the subcategory, it's around heat tech, and it's around saying, okay, now when you buy winter clothing, you try to find something that will keep you warm and not just feel warm. You sort of by positioning the subcategory, you've affected how they buy things. So anyway, those are some of the barriers that you can create, and they're. Oh, yeah, and another one, you can continuously innovate and just be a moving target. But anyway, those barriers are brand barriers. I mean, all those things require branding. And it's to me, it's puzzling and unconscionable that all those books virtually ignore branding.
Yeah. It's so true. They do ignore branding. I just interviewed Gabor Burt on Blue Ocean Strategy, and I don't think we talked about branding in that conversation. We talked about lots of great stuff, but to your point, don't really talk about branding. So let's talk about the digital revolution. How has this made the subcategory growth that you talk about more wider, shorter, and frequently traveled? How did the digital age really change all of this?
First of all, the whole idea of disruptive innovation and new subcategories have been around for forever, and they're always the force behind spurts of growth. But it's really quite amazing. The last 10 or 20 years, the incidence of these have multiplied maybe by an order of magnitude. And as I said, it's all this technology. The Internet of Things, for example, have permitted amazing new categories to develop that didn't exist before, because now you can embed these chips in cars and clothing and people, and you can do so many things you couldn't do before. You can do the same things you did before, but so much better. And then there's artificial intelligence and the ability to have a more pleasant interaction with with some voice from the sky that's not frustrating, and somebody that can do that first and do it better and do it well might have a must-have in some category. and then of course the high-speed internet and all that surrounds it have, and then e-commerce. Of course, we just didn't have e-commerce not too long ago, and we didn't have social media. So now you can. It used to take, 9 months and an ad agency and $20 million to introduce a new subcategory, and it would take, 3 years to force yourself into retail stores that weren't interested in carrying your stuff. But now, in 2 days, Dollar Shave Club was in the marketplace.
Yeah, it's so true. Like the easiest way to create a subcategory is just take something that's brick and mortar and put it online, and then you have a subcategory.
Well,
right?
that was true in the very early days of e-commerce. But even there, they, like Warby Parker, they offered a lot more than that. They offered style and
Try before you buy, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
yeah, and also a sort of a selected, list to choose from, so you weren't overwhelmed.
Yeah. All right. So, my last question before we wrap this up is really talking about higher purpose. You say that more and more organizations are elevating a higher purpose that's driven by things like environmental or social programs. Can you explain why having a higher purpose is becoming more important than ever?
Yeah, that's the subject of my book I've just finished, and it'll be out in the fall. It's there's 5 reasons. First of all, there's been a battle between the sort of Milton Friedman view of the world that all you have to do is satisfy shareholders and you're successful, and that's increasingly lost favor in favor. You have to worry about all stakeholders, including the community and society needs and the planet. Second of all, there's these problems that we have, especially the problems associated with global warming and environmental pollution, and the issues around inequality are so now pronounced. They're so scary. They're so visible. They're so sort of in your face that people are really petrified and motivated to do something. The third thing is that firms are well suited to help. I mean, they can't do it all by themselves. There's got to be a government involved, but they're well suited to help. The firms, unlike the government, are very agile. They're often tuned to the local needs and local problems. They're part of the local community. Even global firms have offices everywhere, and they have these incredible skills and assets. They know how to do stuff that might be relevant, and if they don't know how to do stuff, they know how to communicate stuff that can be part of the solution. And they have a lot of resources, and they have a lot of customers they can leverage, and they have a lot of relationships they can leverage. So they're really well suited to help. And another factor is that a lot of firms sort of need a little lift. They need an energy lift. They need an image lift. They're boring. They're bland. They're functional, and their purpose is not exciting. It's not inspiring. It's not uplifting. It's some of this is just what they make, but others is kind of their perceived attitude. So they really need to they can benefit from, or maybe desperately need, the kind of burst of energy and the kind of image lift that associations with a program can mean. And one of my beliefs is that it's not just to do stuff. You got to have a signature program or programs that are focused, that are branded, that are managed to have real impact and that become visible. And because most programs have sort of ad hoc grants, they have volunteering, they have energy reduction goals, but they're like everybody else. They don't stand out. People don't view them as people that are committed, or firms that are committed.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I interview like two people a week, and it seems like every year there's like a new theme that everyone's kind of talking about. And this year, almost every interview I have brings up this idea of business purpose, conscious leadership, having something aside from profits as your business goal, impacting the environment or society in a positive way. And that's like a huge theme this year across all of my interviews. So it's just so interesting how almost everybody I speak to has some
Yeah.
layer of
And
this.
there was one fifth dimension I didn't mention, and that is employees really insist on it. And so do investors and consumers and others, but employees really. Uh, this is, you know, employees choose firms and they choose to stay with firms because of a feeling that this firm has some heart and social responsibility.
Yeah, it's no longer just about that paycheck. It's about how am I impacting the world and do I feel fulfilled? And if so, then I'll stay. If not, I'll go become an entrepreneur. I'll go do my own thing or, a freelancer, whatever it is. So I think that's all really important points. So let's wrap this up with two questions that I ask all my guests. The first one is, what is one actionable thing that my young and profiters can do today to become more profitable tomorrow?
It's really important to have meaning in your life, a purpose in your life. And I think that you you have to take stock and ask yourself whether uh, you have meaning, and if not, how can you get it, and what direction will give you satisfaction and a sense that what you're doing is worthwhile.
Hmm. And what is your secret to profiting in life?
Well, I've been really fortunate. I've fallen into this branding thing, and I've been at it now for 3 decades. And so I've been really lucky that I really love what I do. And there's so much, um, vitality and interest and so forth in the subject matter that I don't get tired of it. And so if anybody can stumble onto something like that, then I think they're very lucky. And but I have a friend that talks about his advice, and which I think has some merit, is you shouldn't do what you like to do or what you want to do. Instead, you should do what you're good at and what people value. And if you do what you're good at and what people value, you'll probably end up liking it. But even if you don't, you're going to have a lot of options.
Yeah, I love that advice. Dave, where can everybody go learn about you and everything that you do?
Profit.com, PROPHET, has my website. And you can also get there by davidaaker.com, my blog. And but most of what I know and so on are in my books. So my kind of role is to look at different problem areas and to put a branding lens on it, like I did with disruptive innovation and with higher purpose programs, and which I've done in other areas.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Dave.
Well, thanks for having me.
Great conversation. Thanks for listening to Young and Profiting Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please write us a review or comment on your favorite platform. Nothing makes us happier than reading your reviews. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. And don't forget to share this podcast with your friends, family, and on social media. I always repost, reshare, and support those who support us. You can find me on Instagram at Yap with Hala or LinkedIn. Just search for my name. It's Hala Taha. Big thanks to the Yap team as always. This is Hala signing off.